Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. We're exactly a week out from the election that will determine the course of the country for the next 2 years. How likely is a red wave, as some areas Biden won in 2020 are now leaning red? NTD's Melina Wisecup brings us more.
Democrats are in a weak predicament this close to the big day. That's according to ratings from the nonpartisan Cook Political Report. There are at least 10 congressional districts that Biden won in 2020 that are now leaning closer to red this November. This includes areas in California, Long Island, and suburban Portland. And New Jersey's 7th district is held by a Democrat but leans Republican. Democrat incumbent Malinowski is in a tight race and expresses the stakes are high.
I don't think the Democrats can hold on to the House without this district. I think this is a bellwether for the country.
In the Senate, among the most vulnerable Democrat seats, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia.
I saw a preacher the other day, another one, not just Senator Warner. I saw another preacher going after me. Did y'all see that? You know, I was like, in my church, we talk about brotherly love.
And big news for Arizona's Senate race. Libertarian candidate Mark Victor dropped out, endorsing Masters. Victor acknowledged Masters is in a tight race and says he wants to see him win, a move which could send his libertarian loyals to the polls to turn out for the GOP. But it's not all good news for Republicans. A new report indicates the media coverage is partisan. Media watchdog MRC Newsbusters surveyed the coverage from mainstream news outlets in September and October. They found Republicans were hit with 94 negative statements, compared to just 26 negative statements about Democrats. The two parties received roughly the same number of positive comments. And another factor that could spell trouble for Republicans is Democrats' constant messaging around their fiscal plans. Democrats have specifically pointed to a plan outlined months ago by Senator Rick Scott, which calls to sunset all federal legislation. But the senator has clarified that this is simply to hold the government accountable for what they're spending, not to put programs like Social Security benefits on the chopping block. What it would do is it would require the federal government to take up these programs and reconsider them every 5 years, continuing or passing them as they see fit. In addition to this, many Republicans, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, have said they don't have any plans to simply end these social programs. But despite these facts, Democrats are really seizing this messaging opportunity and using it as a way to court voters. President Biden is in Florida today talking on this very issue. Let's listen.
They're coming after Social Security and Medicare in a big way. You've been paying in Social Security your whole life. You earned it. Now these guys want to take it away.
And we have seen that this rhetoric does hit home, especially for older voters. So, for example, we were in Arizona just a couple of weeks ago, and we heard from an older couple who said that this is the reason why they're voting Democrat, because they fear that if Republicans take the majority in Congress, their benefits will be slashed. So we'll see how all of this plays out at the ballot box just a week from now. Steve, back to you.
Republican Senator Rick Scott predicts the GOP will reclaim the Senate majority with 52-plus seats. Here's what he says about next week's elections.
We're going to have 52 plus. I think we're going to keep our 21. So Ron Johnson's going to win, Mehmet Oz is going to win, Ted Budd's going to win. Then I think we clearly pick up Georgia, we clearly pick up Nevada, and I think we have a really good chance here in New Hampshire. I think we have a really good chance in Arizona. I mean, Tiffany Smiley's basically tied in Washington.
In a Monday interview with Fox News, Senator Scott, the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, adds that Republicans would pick up Georgia and Nevada and could also flip Arizona and New Hampshire. Scott also points to a deep blue Washington state as the sleeper race. The latest polls there show Republican candidate Tiffany Smiley making gains against Democrat Senator Patty Murray, who's held that seat for 30 years. Former President Trump won't have his tax returns released to a House committee just yet. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts has taken action over the issue. Roberts temporarily halted a lower court order which required the IRS to release Trump's tax returns to the House Ways and Means Committee. Trump on Monday appealed the lower court order and asked the Supreme Court to intervene. The decision is not final but allows the court more time to deliberate. The Chief Justice asked for a response from the House committee by November 10th. The chairman, Democratic Congressman Richard Neal, asked to see 6 years of Trump's tax returns. He stated that they're necessary to make sure presidents are audited properly by the IRS. And the cost to finance America's growing mountain of debt is rising rapidly. This year alone, the federal government spent $475 billion in interest payments. This was more than $120 billion over last year. Financial analysts worry if things keep up this way by 2025 or 2026, the U.S. may end up paying more in federal interest payments than on our country's own entire defense budget. This year, U.S. military spending was $767 billion, and the federal government's debt could further spiral upwards. The U.S. Treasury said on Monday it expects to issue $550 billion in debt in the fourth quarter. This would be up $150 billion from an August estimate. Welcome back to NTD's Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. Republicans are calling for an investigation after a congressional aide was fired for allegedly working for China. The aide, Barbara Hamlet, works for Representative Don Bayer. She allegedly reached out to several congressional staffers trying to arrange meetings on behalf of the Chinese embassy in Washington. According to the National Review, Hamlet was fired after her efforts were reported to the House Sergeant at Arms. In response, Senator Marco Rubio said in an email that the Chinese Communist Party wants to establish influence over our own government. Representative Bayer's office said it was unaware of Hamlet's actions. The Chinese Communist Party is fresh off of their party congress, where former party leader Hu Jintao was hauled away in front of the entire gathering of Communist Party officials. Current Chairman Xi Jinping also solidifying his power indefinitely. However, what was actually done to change the CCP's trajectory moving forward? To find out some of the policy implications in China and abroad, we sat down with former Congressman and Dean of the Business School at Liberty University, Dr. Dave Brat. Here's a look. Dr. Dave Brat, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here as always. Thanks for having me.
Doctor, I want to ask you about China. The CCP's 20th Congress has just wrapped up, where it's going to drastically shape the future of the Communist Party. What major changes have you seen there, and what are the implications from those changes for the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, there's a few huge moves on paper, and I think that's the significant part, right? The 20th Party platform. On paper, they made three major moves, all in on Marxism. And so that has implications. They got rid of their number 2 guy and their number 3 guy. Part 2 of all in on Marxism as culture means they're going to get rid of the guy who wanted to do just a little bit of economic reform. Right, so bye-bye to free markets altogether, no more price mechanism. From now on, it's the decisive use of the state to make all economic decisions. And that is more problematic because Xi Jinping just got rid of number 2 and number 3, which symbolically says if the state's going to make all decisions, how is he going to get information from the underlings if every time you go up, you get in trouble and you get fired? Right? So that's very problematic for a centralized economy. And then the third piece is the most problematic. They got rid of all of their kind of Chinese cultural language from Buddhism and Confucianism on harmony and peace, which has always been in there for the past 20 years. We want to live along with peaceful coexistence with other nations and harmony in that language. All gone. Now straight onto a war footing. With phrases about, get ready for the struggle sessions. There's going to be increasing international complexity and tension, and basically Taiwan's in the background. Yeah, and so that's the basic summary position of the Party Congress itself.
How do some of these changes impact everyday Americans, say in Oklahoma, both in terms of national security? Should they be concerned? But also from an investment standpoint, what should people know about?
Yeah, well, Rand did a study, Bloomberg reported about 3 months ago. If China hits Taiwan militarily, just for a 1-year war, would cost the United States between 5 to 10% of GDP hit. That's a huge hit. That's not the stock market down, right? If the GDP gets hit, right, gross domestic product, the total amount of goods and services you make a year down 5 to 10%. The stock market's down 50%, just automatic, for starters, right? And then that same RAND report also said that the hit to the Chinese economy would be between 25 and 30% of their GDP. And it's interesting because it looks like they have made a move to go inward, right, with the party document and the 3 planks I just mentioned. And so I think they're getting ready to try to be self-sustaining inwardly. If they make that move, they know what's at stake. And then finally, for U.S. and our investors, BlackRock, $10 trillion, the ESG movement, people are familiar with most of this these days. But now that China is on paper saying we're all in Marxist, right, and let that sink in for a while, right? I mean, this is China and the Soviet Union, now Russia. We're all in Marxist. We're not going to use the price system or free markets at all, and we're on a war footing. And yet we're going to still ask Americans to put, half of our portfolio over in Chinese markets and stocks. I find that to be highly problematic. In the investment lingo, there's a phrase called fiduciary responsibility. It'll be curious whether that rises to more than an ethical statement, right? Whether that gets into legal turf, where you knowingly, or should have known, right, if you're financial professionals, that you're investing in a country who just made those 3 toward full-on Marxism, right, with all the repression and surveillance state that goes along with that, then no use of free markets and a commitment to a war footing. I think there are significant moves ahead. And then, of course, globalism is already coming apart. This enhances the speed of supply chains moving back probably to the U.S. and Mexico and Latin America and South America, and maybe Africa. We just had a CEO summit at Liberty University, 600 CEOs and 10 African nations represented, trying to do business to business. And so I think that kind of relationship is now forming because of these Chinese actions.
Dr. Dave Brat, thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.